Forgotten. Chapter 7. Lucas, consumed by grief and desolation, remained at home, trapped in an abyss of sadness from which he saw no way out. Every corner of the house seemed to scream memories of Laurie and Simon. The laughter that once filled the air was now replaced by an oppressive silence. The couch where they used to cuddle in front of the television, the small dining room where they shared meals and dreams, and even Simon's toys that lay scattered on the floor, everything was a cruel reminder of what he had lost. Heartbroken, Lucas began to turn to alcohol and cigarettes as a way to numb the pain. Bottles piled up on the dining room table, and the air in the house took on a smell of stale tobacco and hopelessness. He spent sleepless nights, sitting in the dark with a glass in his hand, tears rolling down his cheeks. Sometimes he screamed. Other times he just whispered Laurie and Simon's names into the void. The outside world ceased to exist for him. He ignored the calls of friends and family who, worried, tried to help him. But Lucas did not want to hear advice, nor words of comfort. His grief was so deep that he could not imagine anyone could understand him. He did not want company. He only wanted to sink deeper into his own torment. One night, as the clock struck 2 in the morning, Lucas looked at the family portrait that still hung on the living room wall. The image of Laurie and Simon smiling filled his chest with an indescribable pain. With a bottle of whiskey in one hand and a cigarette in the other, he stood up unsteadily and approached the painting. "Why you?" he murmured, his voice breaking. "Why wasn't it me?" The words echoed in the empty room like a mocking echo. He hit the wall hard, dropping the picture, whose glass splintered as it hit the floor. Lucas collapsed next to the remains of the frame, hugging the pieces as if that could bring them back. The alcohol and sadness brought him to a state of catharsis where his mind wandered between reality and memories. The next day, he woke up with a heavy body and a dull mind. The sun streaming through the window seemed like an insult. While trying to clean up the mess from the night before, he found the Japanese man's gun, the same one he had used to destroy his life. He held it in his hands, looking at it with a mixture of hatred and fascination. 3 bullets, he whispered, as if the words had some special meaning. The gun was a symbol of the horror he had experienced, but it also represented something more, a connection to his pain and a possible answer to the question that tormented him. What could he do to ease the torment inside him? Even though the Japanese man was dead, Lucas felt that his family deserved justice, and he would stop at nothing to get it. Over the next few weeks, Lucas's routine became a mix of alcohol, cigarettes, and dark thoughts. But deep within his soul, something was beginning to burn. It was a small but intense spark of fury and determination. He couldn't stay like this forever. He had to find a purpose, a way to honor Laurie and Simon. Laurie's belongings in search of something to comfort her, he found her journal. The pages were filled with thoughts, dreams, and happy memories. One entry in particular caught his eye. "Lucas, I know that life will give us difficult tests, but I want you to always remember this. As long as we are together, there is nothing we cannot overcome. You are strong, more than you think. Never give up." Those words echoed through his mind like a beacon in the darkness. Though Laurie was gone, her message of strength remained. For the first time in weeks, Lucas felt something other than pain, a faint but growing hope. That night, he put aside the alcohol and the cigarette. He sat in front of the window, looking at the moon, and swore to himself that he would find a way to move on. But he also swore something else. He would not let the death of his family go unanswered. he would seek revenge in one way or another, not only to soothe his soul, but to make sure that no one else had to suffer what he had suffered. The road would be long and dangerous, but Lucas knew he had nothing more to lose, and in that loss, he found a reason to get up and face the world once again. Lucas, consumed by grief and desolation, remained at home, trapped in an abyss of sadness from which he saw no way out. Every corner of the house seemed to scream memories of Laurie and Simone. The laughter that once filled the air was now replaced by an oppressive silence. The couch where they used to cuddle in front of the television, the small dining room where they shared meals and dreams, and even Simon's toys that lay scattered on the floor, everything was a cruel reminder of what he had lost. Heartbroken, Lucas began to turn to alcohol and cigarettes as a way to numb the pain. Bottles piled up on the dining room table, and the air in the house took on a smell of stale tobacco and hopelessness. He spent sleepless nights sitting in the dark with a glass in his hand, tears rolling down his cheeks. Sometimes he screamed. Other times he just whispered Laurie and Simon's names into the void. The outside world ceased to exist for him. He ignored the calls of friends and family who, worried, tried to help him. But Lucas did not want to hear advice, nor words of comfort. His grief was so deep that he could not imagine anyone could understand him. He did not want company. He only wanted to sink deeper into his own torment. One night, as the clock struck 2 in the morning, Lucas looked at the family portrait that still hung on the living room wall. The image of Laurie and Simon smiling filled his chest with an indescribable pain. With the bottle of whiskey in one hand and a cigarette in the other, he stood up unsteadily and approached the painting. "Why you?" he murmured, his voice breaking. "Why wasn't it me?" The words echoed in the empty room like a mocking echo. He hit the wall hard, dropping the picture, whose glass splintered as it hit the floor. Lucas collapsed next to the remains of the frame, hugging the pieces as if that could bring them back. The alcohol and sadness brought him to a state of catharsis where his mind wandered between reality and memories. The next day, he woke up with a heavy body and a dull mind. The sun streaming through the window seemed like an insult. While trying to clean up the mess from the night before, he found the Japanese man's gun, the same one he had used to destroy his life. He held it in his hands, looking at it with a mixture of hatred and fascination. 3 bullets, he whispered, as if the words had some special meaning. The gun was a symbol of the horror he had experienced, but it also represented something more, a connection to his pain and a possible answer to the question that tormented him. What could he do to ease the torment inside him? Even though the Japanese man was dead, Lucas felt that his family deserved justice, and he would stop at nothing to get it. Over the next few weeks, Lucas's routine became a mix of alcohol, cigarettes, and dark thoughts. But deep within his soul, something was beginning to burn. It was a small but intense spark of fury and determination. He couldn't stay like this forever. He had to find a purpose, a way to honor Laurie and Simon. Laurie's belongings in search of something to comfort her, he found her journal. The pages were filled with thoughts, dreams, and happy memories. One entry in particular caught his eye. Lucas, I know that life will give us difficult tests, but I want you to always remember this. As long as we are together, there is nothing we cannot overcome. You are strong, more than you think. Never give up. Those words echoed through his mind like a beacon in the darkness. Though Laurie was gone, her message of strength remained. For the first time in weeks, Lucas felt something other than pain, a faint but growing hope. That night, he put aside the alcohol and the cigarette. He sat in front of the window looking at the moon and swore to himself that he would find a way to move on. But he also swore something else. He would not let the death of his family go unanswered. He would seek revenge in one way or another, not only to soothe his soul, but to make sure that no one else had to suffer what he had suffered. The road would be long and dangerous, but Lucas knew he had nothing more to lose. And in that loss, he found a reason to get up and face the world once again. The next day, Lucas woke up with his body tired and his mind plunged into darkness. Trying to find something to give him some relief, he turned on the radio. A soft melody filled the room for a moment, briefly calming his agitated heart. However, that peace was interrupted by the voice of the announcer. In recent news, it has been revealed that a group of scientists led by physicist J.B.A. Robert Oppenheimer is working on a secret project known as the Manhattan Project *. This team, made up of brilliant minds from various disciplines, is developing a weapon that promises to change the course of war, a bomb of unimaginable energy based on nuclear fission. Lucas frowned, catching every word coming out of the device. The idea of a bomb that could destroy entire cities seemed straight out of a science fiction novel, but the announcer's tone left no room for doubt. This project was real, and its goals seemed to be shrouded in a veil of urgency and ambition. The announcer continued. The development of this bomb involves splitting the nucleus of atoms such as uranium-235 or plutonium-239, releasing colossal amounts of energy. The scientists involved worked day and night in secret laboratories with the aim of creating an explosion that has never before been seen in the history of mankind. Lucas listened intently, his mind racing with the possibilities of such a bomb. The scale of destruction they were describing was hard to fathom. This project is said to have a budget of over $2 billion and utilizes scientific and material resources from around the world. If successful, this bomb will not only end the war, but will also redefine military power on a global level. However, the details of the project are strictly classified, and what we do know has come to light through carefully managed leaks. Lucas clenched his fists at the word revenge. Something inside him resonated with the idea of a power capable of ending everything. His mind, still caught up in the tragedy of his wife and son's deaths, pushed him to think about what he would do if he had access to a weapon of such magnitude. The announcer closed with a reflection. The atomic bomb, if successfully developed, will be the ultimate weapon. But it also raises a disturbing question. Is humanity prepared for such devastating power? Lucas turned off the radio. His thoughts were in chaos. Part of him couldn't help but imagine that bomb falling on those who had taken everything from him. But another part felt an even deeper emptiness. It was an idea that disturbed him, because that kind of power didn't solve the pain, it only multiplied it. With a heavy sigh, Lucas sank back into his grief. The information he had heard would linger in his mind like a shadow, fueling dark thoughts as he struggled to find some form of redemption or escape in a world that now seemed beyond repair. Lucas couldn't get what he had heard on the radio out of his mind. The possibility of a bomb with such devastating power seemed unreal and terrifying, but it also aroused his curiosity. He decided not to dwell on his doubts and left home with a light backpack. His destination was a nearby university, a place where the students, always full of ideas and theories, could offer him some perspective on the rumors surrounding the so-called atomic bomb. Upon arrival, the bustle of the campus contrasted with the emptiness he felt inside. Lucas walked to one of the parks within the campus where students gathered to study, chat, or simply relax. Searching for answers, he approached a young woman who was sitting under the shade of a tree reading a book. "Excuse me, can I ask you a question?" Lucas said in a serious but polite voice. The girl looked up, surprised by the formal tone. Sure. How can I help you? Have you heard of an alleged atomic bomb that is being developed? He asked bluntly. The young woman frowned, clearly puzzled. No, I haven't heard anything about that. What is it about? Lucas thanked the girl and continued his search. This time he headed to the science area where he found a group of chemical engineering students. They were sitting on a bench, eating and drinking sodas while laughingly discussing some seemingly trivial topic. Lucas approached, interrupting their conversation. Excuse me, can I talk to you for a moment? He asked, trying to sound friendly. One of the boys, wearing thick glasses and a baseball cap, looked at him curiously. Sure. What do you need? I wanted to know if you've heard anything about the rumors of an atomic bomb. Something they're developing based on nuclear fission, Lucas said, watching their reactions closely. The boys exchanged glances, and one of them shrugged. Yes, we've heard something about it, said one of them, biting into a piece of sandwich. But honestly, we don't think it's possible to create such a colossal weapon. And how do you think it would work if that were real? How would a bomb like that be used? Lucas insisted, his eyes searching for some answer that would give him clarity. Another of the boys, apparently the most analytical of the group, put his drink aside and replied, Well, if they were to develop it, the most logical thing would be to transport it by warplane. A weapon of that caliber would need to be dropped from the air, probably over cities or strategic areas. But of course, this is just speculation. No one really knows if something like that could even work. Lucas nodded slowly, thanking them for their time before walking away. As he walked around campus, his mind processed what he had heard. The possibility of this rumor being true disturbed him more than he was willing to admit. With every step, the student's words echoed in his mind. Via warplanes. He felt like the world was on the brink of something catastrophic. Something that could forever change the course of humanity. But at the same time, he couldn't ignore the fire of vengeance that still burned within him. If such a weapon truly existed, could it be used to bring justice to his pain? The idea was as disturbing as it was alluring, and Lucas knew that question would haunt him for days to come. Lucas couldn't stop thinking about the atomic bomb. It was as if the thought had taken up residence in his mind, fueling both his obsession and his despair. He sat on the couch in his living room, staring at the emptiness around him, and then decided to take a hot bath to try to clear his mind. However, he found no solace. The image of his family and the face of the Japanese man who had murdered them continued to haunt him. Finally, he decided to take a bolder step. Join the Air Force. When he arrived at the military base, a place full of memories of his past as a soldier, Lucas was greeted by an old battle comrade, Mike. Upon seeing him, Mike smiled broadly in surprise and joy. Lucas, dude, how are you? Mike said, hugging him tightly. Here I am, my friend, surviving as best I can. Lucas replied with a mixture of sincerity and pain. What brings you here? I haven't seen you in ages. Lucas looked at him seriously, knowing he couldn't beat around the bush. Lucas, that's a lot of hate you're carrying around. But tell me, where's your sister? Lily? How is she? Mike asked, trying to divert the conversation a little. Lucas sighed and looked down. She's with my aunt. After everything that happened, she took her to live with her. I'm glad she's away from all this. Mike nodded, understanding his friend's pain. I understand. But tell me, what are you looking for here? What is your plan? Lucas looked at him with determination. I want to join the Air Force, Mike. I want to learn to fly, train, do whatever it takes. Mike raised an eyebrow, surprised. Lucas, training is hard and stressful. It's not something you can take lightly. Are you sure you want to do it? Lucas nodded firmly. I'm absolutely sure. But there's something else, Mike. Something I want you to listen to carefully. Go ahead. I'm all ears. I've heard rumors about an atomic bomb, Lucas said, almost in a whisper, as if he was afraid someone else might hear him. And I want to be the one to fly that plane. I want to be the one to drop it on those bastards and end it all once and for all. Mike looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and gravity. He knew that the war had changed many men, but Lucas was consumed by a desire for revenge that could take him to unimaginable extremes. Despite this, he also understood the pain that drove him to make this decision. Lucas, if that's what you really want, I'll do what I can to help you. But you must be sure that there's no turning back on this path you want to take. I'm sure, Mike, it's all I have left, Lucas replied in a determined tone, although his voice carried the full weight of his loss. Lucas began his Air Force training with unwavering determination. Despite his age and the emotional scars he carried, he demonstrated exceptional discipline and endurance. His days became a constant cycle of grueling physical exercises, flight simulators, and theoretical lessons on aeronautics and military strategy. His goal was clear: to master every aspect necessary to become a fighter pilot. But deep down, he harbored a motivation that went beyond duty. The first few weeks were tough. His instructors, accustomed to energetic young men, were skeptical of Lucas, who carried with him an air of tragedy. But he never complained or showed any signs of giving up. If anything distinguished him, it was his silence. He worked in silence, suffered in silence, and learned with an intensity that few could match. His comrade Mike, now his immediate superior, watched from the shadows, admiring his friend's transformation into a meticulous and determined soldier. While Lucas focused on his training, the Manhattan Project was moving forward in secret. Led by physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer and a team of brilliant scientists, the development of the atomic bomb was in a race against time. In clandestine laboratories in Los Alamos, New Mexico, researchers worked day and night to perfect a weapon that would change the course of history. Early tests of nuclear fission had shown that it was possible to release colossal amounts of energy, but much more remained to be done. Lucas, though oblivious to the specifics of the project, followed every rumor and news story with increasing interest. As the months passed, newspapers and radio occasionally reported scientific advances related to nuclear energy, though they never directly mentioned the Manhattan Project. However, the political and military climate of the time made it clear that the United States was seeking a decisive advantage in ending the war. In his second year of training, Lucas was assigned to more advanced practice flights. He spent long hours piloting bombers under extreme conditions, facing simulated enemy attacks, and learning to coordinate with his team. His progress was remarkable, and his superiors began to notice his natural flying ability and his ability to remain calm in high-stress situations. In parallel, scientists at Los Alamos made significant progress. Two main bomb designs were developed, one based on uranium-235, known as Little Boy, and another using plutonium-239, nicknamed Fat Boy Man. Although both designs presented technical challenges, initial tests suggested that these weapons could be devastating. The test detonation, known as Trinity, was scheduled to take place in a remote desert in New Mexico. That would be the first step in demonstrating the power of nuclear fission. Lucas, meanwhile, was beginning to gain the trust of his superiors. His serious attitude and focus made him stand out among his peers. Despite his progress, he still carried his pain and his obsession with revenge. On more than one occasion, Mike confronted him. "Lucas, I know you're doing this for your family, but this job requires more than hate. If you really want to be in charge of something as important as that bomb you're talking about, you need to control yourself." "Don't worry about me, Mike. I know exactly what I'm doing." Training continued, and Lucas was getting closer to his goal. At the same time, the Manhattan Project was moving toward completion. The Trinity test would be the point of no return, and Lucas knew, though without clear details, that soon humanity's most lethal weapon would be ready to be used. Could he be the one to pilot the mission that would change the course of history? That question drove him day after day as the clock of war continued to tick relentlessly. One day, the airbase where Lucas was training received a visitor that marked a turning point. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the physicist who led the development of the atomic bomb, arrived accompanied by a group of engineers and high-ranking officers. His mission was to evaluate what type of aircraft would be most suitable to transport and launch the bomb. That meeting, shrouded in secrecy, attracted the attention of all the pilots and cadets in training, including Lucas, who felt that this moment was a unique opportunity. Lucas watched the physicist with fascination as he walked among the hangars and parked planes. Oppenheimer, with his slight frame and calm demeanor, seemed to radiate a mixture of genius and responsibility. It was not common to see a scientist among military men, but his presence was a sign of the magnitude of what was at stake. Determined to seize the opportunity, Lucas steeled himself and approached Oppenheimer as he chatted with a group of engineers. Although the guards tried to stop him, Oppenheimer held up his hand, allowing him to pass. Lucas, his heart racing, stopped in front of the physicist and looked him straight in the eyes. "Mr. Oppenheimer, I want to be the one to drop that bomb." The physicist looked at him intently, silently assessing him for a few seconds that seemed like an eternity. Finally, in a calm and firm tone, he replied, "Don't worry. I can see in your eyes the reason why you want to do it. If the time comes, it will be you. But don't rush. This decision is not up to me alone. Talk to your lieutenant and continue with your training." Lucas, moved to tears, knelt before Oppenheimer in a gesture of gratitude and reverence. But the scientist, with a serious expression, indicated that he should get up. "Don't kneel, not even before angels," he said firmly. "Stand up and maintain your dignity. There is still much work to be done, and the bomb is still in development. Besides, I have to consult Professor Einstein on some matters." Lucas stood up, wiping away his tears, and thanked him in a shaky voice. The physicist patted him lightly on the shoulder before returning to his technical discussions with the engineers. As he walked away, Lucas felt a new hope spark within him. Although the path was still uncertain, he knew he was closer to his goal. He returned to his training with renewed energy, determined to prove that he was ready for the mission that would change the course of history. Lucas left the hangar with determination and immediately went to his lieutenant's office. Without knocking, he entered with firm steps, but with his heart pounding with emotion. The lieutenant, a man hardened by years of service, looked up from the documents he was reviewing, surprised by the intrusion. "Sir," Lucas said, his voice shaking but determined, "I'll be the one to drop the bomb. I know it's still in development, but I've already spoken to Mr. Oppenheimer. This is the reason I joined the Air Force." The lieutenant watched him closely, analyzing the intensity in his words and the passion reflected in his face. He closed the folder in front of him and stood up, walking until he was in front of Lucas. "Son, from the moment you entered this base, you were already enlisted for something big. It's not a matter of promises. It's a matter of preparation and sacrifice." Lucas, his eyes filled with tears, nodded. He was overcome with emotion, and his voice broke as he spoke. "Sir, I will not die in peace until I accomplish this. Thank you very much, sir." The lieutenant, moved by Lucas's sincerity, put a hand on his shoulder and spoke in a firm but understanding voice. "Don't be hasty, boy. The war is not won with words, but with actions. Show with each day of training that you are ready for this mission. And remember, this is not just about you, but about something much bigger." Lucas wiped away his tears and nodded with determination. He knew his path was full of obstacles, but his purpose was clear. He left the office with a renewed sense of commitment, ready to train harder than ever. In the days that followed, Lucas became one of the most disciplined cadets at the base. He spent hours perfecting his aerial maneuvers, studying combat tactics, and learning everything he could about bombs and their mechanism. His obsession with being prepared was evident to everyone, but no one questioned it. His pain and passion were the engine that drove him. Meanwhile, development of the atomic bomb was progressing in the laboratories. Initial tests showed promising results, but technical challenges remained to be overcome. Rumors at the base intensified. The bomb would not only be a tool of war, but a weapon capable of changing the world forever. Lucas watched each new report with interest, listening to the more experienced engineers and pilots discuss the possibilities. The wait was difficult, but he knew that each day brought him closer to fulfilling his purpose. Time passed quickly, and Lucas continued to train tirelessly. His piloting skills had become legendary within the airbase. His maneuvers were impeccable, his aim unsurpassed, and his physical and mental endurance unbreakable. By the time the development of the atomic bomb reached its final stages, Lucas was not only more than prepared, but had earned the respect and trust of his superiors. Meanwhile, Oppenheimer had been engaged in intensive discussions with Albert Einstein about the implications of using nuclear power. Einstein, who had played a crucial role in the letter to Roosevelt that initiated the Manhattan Project, expressed deep concern about the devastating scope of the bomb. In a private exchange, Oppenheimer laid out the dilemma. "Albert, the device is almost ready, but I can't help but wonder, do we really understand what we're about to unleash?" Einstein, with a grave look and the weight of the world in his words, replied, "We knew this could happen when we decided to explore the power of the core. Now it is humanity's responsibility to use it wisely or face its own extinction." Oppenheimer nodded, aware that the decisions they were making would shape the course of history. At the air base, news that the weapon was nearly ready came like a storm. Officers began discussing plans to select the pilot who would have the honor or burden of launching it. When Lucas's name appeared on the list of candidates, there was no opposition. He was the only one who seemed to have both the technical skills and the personal determination to carry out the mission. One afternoon, Oppenheimer visited the airbase again, this time with a clear objective to inspect the pilots and make sure that the chosen one understood the magnitude of his task. Lucas, upon hearing of his arrival, made his way to the main hangar where the physicist was stationed. Seeing him, Lucas snapped to attention, waiting for an opportunity to speak. Oppenheimer, recognizing him, called him over with a gesture. "Lucas, how do you feel about this mission?" the physicist asked, looking at him with a mix of curiosity and empathy. Luke replied firmly, "Sir, I am more than ready. I have dedicated my life to this, not just because of the war, but because of the damage they have done to my family. I want to make sure that no other man goes through what I went through." Oppenheimer stared at him, searching his eyes for something beyond anger. After a few moments, he nodded slowly. Don't underestimate the weight of this responsibility, Lucas. What you're about to do will not only affect the Japanese, but the entire world." "I understand, sir, but I'm ready." That same night, Lucas was officially informed that he had been selected as the lead pilot to drop the atomic bomb. Despite the recognition, he felt a crushing weight on his shoulders. The world would see him as a hero or a monster, but to him, he was just a man seeking justice through revenge. Meanwhile, the final details of the weapon were being fine-tuned at Los Alamos. The uranium and plutonium, essential components of the bomb, were subjected to meticulous testing to ensure their effectiveness. Physicists, engineers, and military personnel knew that the success of this project would mark a turning point in human history. Lucas, now more committed than ever, began to mentally prepare himself for the day when he would have to fulfill his mission. He knew that the moment was approaching, and that his life would change forever once the weapon was in his hands. The sun was setting behind the hills when Lucas arrived home, exhausted but eager. His crisp uniform and boots thudded on the wooden floor as he plopped down into the old armchair in the living room. The leave of absence that Mike, his friend and lieutenant, had granted him was welcome, though Lucas knew his mind would find no rest. All he could do was wait for the call that would send him to fulfill his destiny. Jansen Alnai, he turned on the radio, searching for something to fill the silence he had been immersed in since his arrival. A soft melody filled the air, and for a moment, Lucas closed his eyes, letting the music envelop him. However, his mind quickly returned to the present. He couldn't distract himself for long. He knew that every second that passed brought him closer to the day he would receive the order to enlist and embark on his mission to Japan. Lucas looked around the house, now empty and filled with memories. His son Simon's toys were still in the corner of the living room, and the scent of Laurie's perfume seemed to linger in the air as if it refused to fade. "This is all because of you," he murmured, looking at a photograph of his family that still hung on the mantelpiece. The night progressed slowly. Lucas got up from the couch and decided to make himself something to eat. He opened the cupboard, but there were hardly any provisions left. Despite his lack of appetite, he cooked a simple dish of eggs and toast. As he ate, his mind wandered back to the rumors he had heard at the base. The weapon was ready, and the tests had been successful. The only thing missing was the right moment to launch it, and Lucas knew he was destined to be the man to do it. When he finished dinner, he went to his room. He turned on a table lamp and took out a notebook that he had started using as a diary since the day he enlisted in the Air Force. He took a pen and, in a firm handwriting, wrote, "Day 745. I'm home, but my heart is still at base. Mike says I need to rest, but I know the call will come soon. The bomb is ready, and with it, my chance to avenge my family. I don't know if I'll find peace after this, but I know I'll have at least tried. Laurie, little Simon, this mission is for you. I love you and miss you every day." He closed the journal and placed it on his bedside table. He glanced at the clock. It was 2 a.m, but sleep was not coming. He lit a cigarette and lay back in bed, staring at the ceiling as the smoke slowly rose. In his mind, he went over every detail of training, every maneuver he had perfected. He can't afford to fail. The next morning, a letter arrived at his door. The envelope, marked with the official seal of the Air Force, made his heart stop for a moment. With trembling hands, he opened it and read the words he had been waiting for. "Lieutenant Lucas, you are ordered to report to the airbase within 48 hours. The destination of your mission will be revealed upon arrival. Prepare for the most important operation of your career." Lucas stood still, reading the words over and over again. His moment had come. He put out the cigarette he was still holding and stood up determinedly. He knew this would be his last day at home before embarking on a mission that would change history forever. He packed his things meticulously, including the photograph of his family, which he kept in the inside pocket of his jacket. As he looked one last time at the house he had shared with Laurie and Simon, he took a deep breath. "I won't let you down," he whispered, closing the door behind him. Arriving at the base, he was greeted with solemnity. Officers were already in motion, making final preparations. The atmosphere was charged with tension, but also with purpose. Lucas knew that the world was about to witness something unprecedented, and he was the linchpin of that historic moment. The plane, a B-29 specially designed to carry the bomb, was undergoing final inspection. Lucas watched from afar, feeling a mixture of pride and responsibility. In the background, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in reddish tones. It was a harbinger of what was to come, a dawn tinged with fire and destruction that would mark the end of a war, but at a cost no one could foresee. Lucas was ready until the new order to pilot the plane. Time seemed to stop at the airbase, and the anticipation grew with each minute. Technicians and mechanics worked tirelessly on the B-29, adjusting every detail, making sure it was in perfect condition for the mission. On one side of the plane, a technician with a spray can painted the letters Enola Gay *, immortalizing the name that would represent that historic operation. Lucas watched the process seriously. He knew that the name was a tribute to the mother of the pilot initially designated, but deep down, he felt that he would be the one to lead the mission. The possibility filled him with excitement and anxiety. Meanwhile, the top brass discussed the final details in a corner of the runway. An officer approached Lucas and spoke to him in a firm tone. "Lieutenant Lucas, your name is being considered to lead this mission. The final decision will be made tomorrow, but your performance has been exceptional." Lucas nodded, trying hard to contain the mix of nerves and determination that was overwhelming him. "Thank you, sir. I am prepared for whatever is necessary. I will do my duty." The officer patted him on the shoulder before walking away. That night, Lucas returned to his quarters on the base. He lit a cigarette and wrote in his journal, "Day 748. The plane has a name, Enola Gay. Although a decision has not yet been made, I feel that this mission belongs to me. I am ready to take on this responsibility for my family, for my country, and for the peace we have longed for." He put the journal away, lay down on the bed, and closed his eyes. Despite the quietness of the night, the tension in the air was evident. He knew something big was about to happen. The next morning, the pilots and officers were called into the operations room. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Oppenheimer and other Manhattan Project scientists were present, along with the top military brass. The commander took the floor. "Gentlemen, the atomic bomb named Little Boy is ready to be used. The target will be the city of Hiroshima, Japan. Now it is time to announce the pilot who will carry out this historic mission." Silence filled the room. Lucas felt his heart pounding as they waited for the announcement. Lieutenant Lucas has been selected as the lead pilot for this operation. His dedication and skills make him the right man for this mission. Lucas stood up, his face reflecting a mixture of pride and responsibility. He walked to the front of the room, where he received congratulations from his superiors and peers. Oppenheimer greeted him with a serious look and words that resonated deeply with him. "It won't be an easy task, but I trust you. Do it for the future of the world." "I will not disappoint you, sir. This is my purpose," Lucas replied with conviction. In the days that followed, Lucas and his crew engaged in intensive planning sessions. They learned every detail about Little Boy and ran meticulous simulations. Finally, mission day arrived. The Enola Gay stood ready on the runway, its engine roaring loudly. Lucas adjusted his uniform, took a moment to look at the horizon, and muttered, "Laurie Simone, this is for you." He boarded the plane and took his place in the cockpit. The crew took their positions, and with a thunderous roar, the Enola Gay * took off, marking the beginning of a mission that would change history forever. Lucas flew the Enola Gay with determination, leading the group of planes that escorted him through the sky. Around him, the roar of engines filled the air, while the sun illuminated the clouds. The objective was clear, and each passing minute brought the crew closer to the decisive moment. Suddenly, the calm was broken. From afar, Japanese planes were spotted approaching rapidly. The radio came to life with urgent orders. "In defense formation, enemy planes at 3 o'clock. The American fighters escorting the Enola Gay took up their positions, ready to face the threat. Lucas, focused on his task, maintained the course while watching the deployment of the planes through the windows. Within seconds, the skies became a battlefield. Machine gun fire echoed like thunder, and flashes of explosions lit up the horizon. To the naked eye, it looked like a dance of lights in the sky, as if angels and demons were engaged in a heavenly battle. "Lucas, stay on course," shouted one of his co-pilots, as a bullet grazed the fuselage. "Got it," Lucas replied, gripping the controls tightly. His mission was clear: reach the target at all costs. A Japanese plane dived toward the Enola Gay, firing relentlessly. However, one of the escorts intercepted the enemy just in time, shooting it down in an explosion that lit up the air just a few meters from the bomber. "Good job, guys," Lucas said over the radio, though he knew the threat was far from over. Another Japanese plane managed to get close and fired directly at the right wing of the Enola Gay Asterisk, causing the plane to rock violently. "Damn it, we're losing stability," one of the engineers on board reported. "Hold it steady. We haven't come this far to fail now," Lucas ordered, adjusting the controls with shaking hands. The escort worked tirelessly, shooting down one by one the enemy planes that tried to intercept the bomber. The sky was a chaos of smoke, explosions, and flashes, but Lucas stayed focused. The minutes felt like an eternity, and every second that passed was a victory in itself. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Japanese planes began to withdraw, unable to overcome the American defenses. Radios confirmed that the path to Hiroshima was clear. "Clear course. Prepare for bombardment," announced one of the escorts. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Despite the losses and the chaos, they had reached the point of no return. He adjusted the controls and looked at his co-pilot. "It's now or never," Lucas said as the Enola Gay Asterisk began its final approach toward the target. The echoes of battle still rang in his ears, but he knew his mission was just beginning. The Enola Gay Asterisk was flying over Japan on the morning of August 6, 1945. The time was 8:15 a.m., and the city of Hiroshima, located in the Chugoku region, stretched out beneath the plane like a serene model, completely oblivious to the disaster that was about to occur. Lucas adjusted the controls while his co-pilot gave the last coordinates. The target was clear. The city center, a densely populated area surrounded by wooden and concrete buildings. Lucas felt the adrenaline rush through him, and with a last breath he gave the signal. "Open the floodgates." The bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, began its free fall toward Earth, slowly sliding out of the plane's compartment. From above, it looked insignificant, a small shadow against the landscape below. "God forgive us for this," Lucas muttered, as the plane turned quickly away from the epicenter. On the ground, life went on as usual. Men and women walked to work, children played in the streets, and street vendors shouted their wares in the markets. At a school near the river, a group of children recited history lessons in unison, while their teachers reviewed their exercises. Some looked up, puzzled by the sound of the plane flying overhead, but no one could foresee what would happen next. At 8:16 a.m., the sky lit up with a blinding flash. For an instant, it was as if a second sun had risen over Hiroshima. Then came the deafening roar, an explosion that shook the earth with the force of 1,000 storms. A small tabby cat named Chicho was running desperately through the streets of the city. The animal, visibly restless, arrived at his home, where his owner, a middle-aged man, welcomed him in his arms. "What's wrong, Chicho?" the man asked, stroking the cat. But the animal didn't stop shaking. Something wasn't right. The man went to the window, holding his faithful companion. Seeing the clear sky, he said in a low voice, "Oh, Chicho, God, we commend our spirits into your hands." It was then that the flash engulfed them. The scorching heat wave passed through the house as if it were made of paper. The man felt his body burn instantly, his nerves no longer perceiving anything. Little Chicho tried to escape the heat, but they both disintegrated together, leaving no trace only charred shadows marked on the walls of what was once their home. At the nearby school, the explosion was just as devastating. The children closest to the epicenter were consumed by the heat in an instant, evaporating in the blink of an eye. Others were thrown against the walls and ceilings by the blast wave. A teacher who tried to protect the children with her body was trapped under the rubble, her hair and skin on fire. Her last look reflected the helplessness of not being able to save the little ones in her care. Those who survived the initial impact began to run through the hallways, their faces and hands burned to the bone. Some children, still alive, screamed in pain as their bodies lay motionless on the ground. Amidst the devastation, a woman held onto her baby with all her might as she tried to flee. The scorching heat caught up with her, causing her skin to begin to peel away from her skeleton. Still, in an act of pure instinct, she tried to cover her little one with her body, as if her embrace could protect him. But nothing in the world could save them, not when hell had risen to the surface. Both were consumed by the flames, disappearing in a flash that left not even ashes behind. As the mushroom cloud rose into the sky, some people whose injuries were fatal were still moving. Although their bodies were burned beyond recognition, their nerves were still reacting to the trauma. These figures with empty eyes and mechanical movements walked through the streets as if searching for something, but they made no sound. Some collapsed halfway along the road, their bodies no longer able to support themselves, while others staggered off to nowhere, leaving a trail of burnt skin and flesh behind them. The Alta River, which ran through the city, became a place of despair. Dozens of people, their clothes and skin charred, threw themselves into the water to douse the burns that consumed them. However, the water was soon contaminated with corpses, ashes, and charred fragments. Those who managed to drink from its poisoned waters fell dead instantly, their bodies writhing on the ground. It was a place where hope drowned along with the souls who sought it. From the Enola Gay, Lucas and the crew watched the impact from a distance. The mushroom cloud slowly rose, a tower of death and destruction that rose into the sky with imposing serenity. "My God," one of the crew members whispered, with tears in his eyes. Lucas couldn't look away. He had achieved what he set out to do, but now the weight of his actions was falling on him like a mountain. As he looked out at the destruction, a single word echoed in his mind: revenge. But that revenge, he now knew, came with a price he could never pay. The city of Hiroshima was burning like hell on earth. Lucas knew that, although the mission was accomplished, the scars of that day would stay with him forever.